Good morning, everyone. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Gareth Loynes. I'm the lead engineer at S&S. So if you've done a project with us in the past, then I hopefully know you. Even if it's just helping out maybe one of my colleagues on a design or an implementation. If you're working on one of our newer products or high-end products, I'll certainly be involved in that as well. And I guess the key thing here today is to talk about some of the bits that maybe don't always get talked about. Like, we have lots of customer success stories, we have lots of case studies, we have lots of information, but bringing together the technology and the people that can help deliver that to you is really what S&S has been about and what Saxis is about moving forwards. As you may be able to hear, my voice is not very clear. Unfortunately, I lost it last week, so I've been told to, rest it as much as possible. So I'm going to be asking for a little bit of audience participation. So feel free when I say, can you raise your hands, do that. If you've got any comments or if you've been through a similar experience, and you want to share some of that, then certainly let's go ahead and do that. But these are the key things here. So Saxis are all about delivering and enhancing and protecting your IT wherever it is. A lot of people use a lot of words to do that. So people say they focus on cybersecurity, infrastructure, cloud operations, DevOps, cost optimization. Goodness me, the list goes on. What I care about is what we do for you end to end from a delivery perspective to make sure that you get what you need out of a project. I was speaking to a few people at break and, we didn't use the word backup. Or we tried not to use the word backup when we talked about data protection, because it's actually about the restore. It's not the backup. It's how quickly we can restore. So we always focus on what's the objective, okay? So I'm going to brush through this relatively quickly because Lee's covered off quite a lot of this. But I think it's important to mention it that from an engineering perspective, that's how the company started. So consultancy, engineering. All of the staff at the company had IT roles in an IT industry at a very senior level. So you're talking about a group of engineers that started the company with lots of experience. Over the years, 20 plus years now of technical know-how, we've grown that, we've expanded into the reseller market. We've kept up with that engineering first ethos, multi-certified engineers, and now we support firms globally around the world. It doesn't end there, as Lee already touched on. There'll be more hybrid multi-cloud stuff coming out from us. Really, it's about making sure that the market had matured enough to make sure that we weren't offering you bad advice around that. There's a lot of choice out there. There's a lot of vendors that will quite happily offer the earth and usually under-deliver on that. So we wanted to make sure that we can work with that in a sensible fashion with you. InfoSec, so going beyond just data protection into cybersecurity and other areas. And of course, we've touched a little bit on immutable storage and backup and data protection. Oh, I said backup, I shouldn't say that. Sorry, data protection technologies. Most interestingly as well, we mentioned logistics and recruitment. And, the people aspect is a key part of Saxis. It always has been, and it continues to will be. Logistics is interesting because it's not just, it sounds like you're just talking about moving kit from A to B, but it's also about data center optimization. So some people come to us and say, well, I still have an on-prem requirement, but I can't really afford £1 million a year on energy. How can we do that? How can we improve our data center operations? And that's something that we can help with. Auditing. I mean, anyone here an engineer or engineering background? Put your hands up. Go on, don't be afraid. Okay. Who loves label making? Who loves cable tidying? All those, yeah, I can see people at the back, it's good. Don't be shy, don't sit at the back and put your hand up, I saw you. So all of those sorts of things, we can offer an end-to-end service that will audit your data center, give you a detailed map of all the equipment, of every single fiber cable within that, to give you the option to then go forward to optimize it. So that gives you peace of mind that you know what you've got and what you're paying for, but it also means that you can optimize that moving forwards. I'm going to start talking about customers now. So we have a few of the customers here today, so hopefully they won't mind us talking about them. I'm sure it's all positive, That's the main thing. And what I hope to do is I'm going to talk, there's some information on the screen there about the types of work that we've actually done with them and how we've implemented that technology. And what I've tried to do is bring together lots of different types of things. So we're not just going to talk about storage, we're not just going to talk about logistics. I'm going to try and talk about a little bit about each topic. So, unfortunately, I have my notes here. Okay, so with Angel Trains, we looked at how to build a highly available and resilient VMware environment, because these days, just because on-prem maybe isn't immediately as fashionable as going to the cloud and doing all these wonderful things, the requirements are still there to deliver a highly available, highly scalable on-prem system. So we're able to move from a sort of traditional active-passive kind of setup into a highly available active-active data center using VMware and stretch metro cluster technologies. Okay, so they're a customer that we've worked with for many, many years. It's given them great agility of workloads between data centers, immediate storage failover, and ongoing support and DR readiness checks that we do on their behalf. We also work with them on a DR response plan as well. So we help them build a DR response plan, and very recently we even had a real-life test of that DR response plan, which was good and positive, hopefully. I can't see anyone disagreeing from Angel Trains here at the moment. I don't know if he's moved seats. But yes, it was a very positive story. Okay, so we work with Grosvenor. So Grosvenors are a leading international organisation. They do property investment, ag tech, rural estate development, etc. So we've worked with them for a number of years on various technologies. I think it's fair to say that this requirement sort of took us all by surprise. Okay, so a notice was sent through to them completely out of the blue. You have to move out of your hosting provider within 60 days. It must be done. Hosting providers closing down. Those of you here may be familiar with one that starts with S and ends in D, called SunGard. And, sorry, did I say that out loud? So SunGard were going through a period of change, and they wanted to, they were basically phasing out a lot of their availability centers. That 60 days was immediately brought down to 30 days. Now, for those of you that try to provision even WAN circuits in under 6 months, you know what a challenge this can be. So it was a challenge to find a suitable location, suitable connectivity for them. But in the end, we were able to complete a full end-to-end relocation, pre-move audit visits, updated cable labeling, because no one really likes that job. I know some of you do. It was all fully insured and shipped all within a single day. So from their point of view, they just got a single person, single touch at S&S to deal with all the planning and technical aspects. The DR site contents were fully insured, and all the physical handling was taken care of. After that was done, S&S engineers performed a full health check of that VMware estate and performed test DR failovers all on the same day. So the risk to them was minimized significantly by having a single partner to turn to that was able to do the move, but also helped to ensure that everything was correct when it arrived at the other end. Okay, a slightly different project, and we've touched on ransomware already today, but ransomware has the potential to cause a lot of headaches. You know, I don't need to tell you that. That risk is felt no less in public sector, especially with the NHS and the history, the sometimes public history the NHS have had with ransomware. So there's always ongoing reviews, security reviews, and as part of that, one of our larger London-based healthcare providers, they had stringent new security policies come in, you know, and they came to us and said, look, how are we going to meet this? We were already working with them on some data protection projects. We were looking at expanding the capacity within that. But what we were able to do was using a combination of features with that and deploying Cloudian object storage into their environment. We were able to get the ability to use their existing investment, which was relatively new, simplified management with no tapes, which was a key requirement due to the volume of data that they had, which was tapes, as we know. You either love them or hate them. I personally think they definitely have their place, but for this organisation, it was almost a no-no, which was fair enough. Equally, some of the data was, well, we're not going to put it in the cloud. So we had to find that middle ground, and that middle ground was, okay, third-party, Cloudian hosted, so it is air-gapped, administratively networked, etc. So that allowed them to meet a security and data protection requirement, and from their point of view, all they had were a couple of tick boxes on their original backup data protection system, I should say, that they could just tick and go, okay, now I want for this data set encryption at this level, third tier off to immutable storage for this data set, etc. So for them, it was a very easy thing to do. They could come to us and we were able to handle all of the integration and processes around that. Okay, so now we're all guilty sometimes of putting off that equipment replacement. That usually is because of budgets, but suddenly being left with a bit of a dilemma. So in this case, we're just going to touch briefly on a rather long story that I imagine I'm going to keep a bit short for the time. A company that we've been working with, a global recruitment company, who shall remain nameless, essentially we're moving a very complex multi-site infrastructure to the cloud. Okay, so they were a previous NetApp customer and very happy NetApp customer. And they had very good relationships with a particular cloud provider, who I won't name, but let's just say they're one of the big three. And they were moving forward with their project quite happily. 2-3 years into their project, they discovered that some of their data sets and applications just would not work. There were performance implications. There were other implications that hadn't been taken into account. There were millions of pounds that had been spent. So what was going to happen? And the answer was, ironically, okay, let's take lock and stock and have what we've got at the moment. Let's have a look at what we've got and let's try and see whether we could have done something a little bit more different at the beginning. And we weren't involved with the actual cloud migration project to begin with, but they then came to us and said, look, you know NetApp, you know our applications. How can we fix what's happened with the cloud project? And the answer actually was, well, you've got racks and racks and racks of hybrid cloud technology, hybrid storage array technology, which you love. You use all the data protection features and everything. That's great. But these days you can get, and I think at the time it was only 2 petabyte effective. I'm sure it's much more now. You can get up to 2 petabyte effective in X, Y, and Z NetApp all-flash unit, which means that you don't have to relearn everything. You're going to get better performance and will bring back on-premise all of those workloads that do not fit the cloud until your application designers are ready and confident to move forward. And so the reason I mentioned at the beginning about putting off that upgrade is if you're on a journey, like to the cloud or to new levels of cybersecurity, sometimes that means that we kind of put off, I won't renew the maintenance on that, it will be done next year. The project will be finished next year. I won't renew the maintenance on that one because so-and-so is going to come in and do that. And this was a case whereby by the time the application came back on-prem, we actually ended up with, we needed more performance anyway, was the answer. So we've worked with them for 7 years now on this project. That gives you an indication. This is a very complex customer, but what we're able to do is move them to the cloud at a bit more of a sensible pace, whilst giving the huge benefit that they got by having the NetApp systems refreshed on site and taking up a whole lot less space. So we went from 2 racks of hybrid to 2 U's of flash NVMe. So, you know, the types, it's not just the pace of cloud development, but the pace of hardware development hasn't reduced either. So it meant they could keep doing what they're doing during the migration. It also meant that ONTAP's non-disruptive nature with the upgrades and everything else was very straightforward to them. So they no longer had to dedicate lots of staff to managing the NetApp environment. So we provided ongoing support through the upgrade and expert companion programs that we run. And now we've had the privilege of, as I made in my notes here, Looking forward to October this year, so it's November, so hopefully this is accurate. The final workloads have been migrated to the cloud, and continue to be big NetApp customers using all of the wonderful things that Grant mentioned earlier. NetApp Cloud Manager, NetApp Azure Files. We get to say one final goodbye to our NetApp on-prem storage because we've been tasked with the certified destruction through our logistics program, certified destructions and removal of that. Okay. So, talking about our sort of storage projects, colleges and academia in particular, we've got a wide variety of reference customers that we've used that have come on board with various technologies. And I think this is another prime example of taking a system that was probably working fine, but maybe had reached the end of its life, it's fair to say, and building a highly available and resilient data storage platform from that. So we're able to do failover, and as Grant mentioned earlier, these ONTAP boxes now, these all-flash boxes, do your block, your NAS, your object, your replication, your DR. It's perfect fit for education, local government. It is absolute perfect fit. So these are NVMe-based systems, so extreme performance. And at one site in particular, and I'm looking around for faces here because I believe we have someone from Norwich here. There you are, you're in the middle, you're hiding. Put your hand up so everyone, no, don't worry about it. So I believe we took out a rack and a half of equipment, is that right? Three racks of equipment. Okay, so we took 3 racks of equipment out and replaced at, well, I guess 2 sites, I suppose, with a 2U unit at each site. So getting all of that performance, reducing the footprint for things like, electricity usage, cooling usage is all key. It also means that the integration possibilities moving forward are never ending. And Grant touched on this earlier. You've got things like data sense, backup to the cloud, tier to the cloud, all amazing products and features within the all-flash product. I should say, having worked within the education sector myself for 12 years, I've got great respect for the untold heroes of the IT manager in education. So if you want any good education stories, come and see me. Okay, so our final 2 stories deal with the fallout from ransomware. And the gentleman, well, there's a couple of gentlemen here today, I believe, from Colchester, that have well-publicised case studies on this. And why is that? Well, because as much as it's something you don't want to admit, it's how you deal with it. It's how you come out the other side. And it's fair to say that these guys came out stronger from that. So it was after a particular Easter break, they were faced with a critical situation. Administration accounts were locked out. Many core VM services were unavailable. Many other services were unavailable. Communications were affected. Once it had become apparent that a ransomware attack was taking place, or had taken place, S&S resources, along with other cybersecurity experts, were assigned in supporting the full stack of the infrastructure rebuild that was required. So from S&S's point of view, we could cover things like networking with Ruckus and Netgear, data storage with NetApp and VMware and virtualization. Data protection is a key part of this because essentially the restoration process was 2-pronged. One prong was with NetApp and snapshots, but the major prong was with Rubrik, which I know we've already heard about today. So the Rubrik story, the Rubrik product, I think, was very new to Colchester at the time, and see, my slide hasn't moved on. So the Rubrik story was very new to them, or the Rubrik product, I should say, and it's important. It took a little while for me to grasp, because when you speak to someone after this sort of incident, and you're sitting down, and you're saying, okay, well, let's look at the backups. I did use the word again. Let's look at the backups. Let's look at the restore points that we've got, knowing that they used NetApp, knowing that historically they'd used another product beginning with V, okay, knowing that they had moved on to Rubrik. So let's have a look at that. And it was like I was told, well, the Rubrik solution is very new, Gareth. We've only had it a couple of weeks. Yeah, we're getting used to it. We're getting it all on board. But we were able to achieve those outcomes there. I say we, to be fair, credit to the team at Colchester, who did a hell of a lot of work over a period of time just to bring that back. But the things like the staging the VM restore on the rubric box meant you could check that box. You could bring that box back. You could segregate it from everything else. You could do independent checking of that before you bring it onto the live system. So, headline bits, core VMware environment re-established within 48 hours. So we had to do a complete rebuild. We are talking about ransomware that trashes the hosts as well as the VMs. This is serious stuff. 100% data recovery from ransomware within 10 days. Zero data loss and no ransom paid. Or if it was, I didn't get any of it. Colchester have also entered into a multi-year agreement with us for ongoing help desk, health check, and consultancy services. And that's covering multiple technology vendors. So again, moving forwards, we know they're in a great place with Rubrik. We know they're in a great place with NetApp. But now they've got a single point of contact that they can come back to with SMS/Saxis to get health checks, regular health check reports, DR testing, and everything else. So the final story. Thank you for bearing with me. I didn't have time to do cuddly slides. I left all of that to Lee. He's got the graphics and the music and all the wonderful stuff there. This is an extremely recent story for us. A global media organisation. It's not been made public. We will not be talking about it in great detail per se, but a ransomware attack targeting not just UK and European arms of the company, but global. It's one of our first global customers to be hit globally. Occasionally you have little pockets, maybe European offices or America offices, but not other parts of the world. But this was global. I should add, we mentioned these stories. We don't necessarily put them in. We don't put them in to break, okay? But this was a brand new deployment. This was a brand new deployment that had security checks. This was a brand new deployment that had hardening. This was a brand new deployment that had the latest patches. Yet, because it was the nature of the business, being a global business, a global organization, the access point is not always through your most secure point. So, being a global organization, at some vector, credentials were obtained and ransomware attack began. Each hour of downtime was very serious business. Okay, you're talking about potentially hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of money being lost just because it was a regular sales and also a rental-based business. IT staff in each country needed extra support to be able to recover from this. And once again, just as in Colchester, we're not talking about we've got a few infected VMs, we've lost our database, or we've lost our 365. We're talking we've lost nearly everything in one form or another. So what that actually meant was that we had quite a big task in our hands. But it's one of the things that I think, one of the recovery efforts that we've been involved in, not taking anything away from Colchester, is one of the proudest ones. Because we were notified and within 4 hours we were on site. Within that time frame, we managed to re-establish all of the UK core infrastructure services within 6 hours across 2 data centres. So that meant that they were then in a position to say, okay, we've got a good place to start from, we've got everything rebuilt, we can choose our restore points, we can go and select which is the safest recovery tier. And for them, it was very strong. It was a very strong story and compelling reason to use us because investigations into this, and for any of you that have dealt with, actually, this is going to be one of my questions. Does anyone here want to admit to having a ransomware attack where they've had to work with maybe an insurance company? No, because that's always the big thing these days is insurance. And also put your hand up if you're not allowed to tell me. No? Okay. So one of the key things is if you have cyber recovery insurance, they will only pay out and they will only support you if you follow a set process. So we were working, and we had to work to contain the spread, start the rebuild process, but not lose any of that critical information. And ironically, it was the very products and the very features in NetApp that are there to protect you against these incidents that were also then able to lock down examples of the malware, the ransomware. Okay? We were able to isolate and take zero-space clones of affected data and lock them away so they couldn't be tampered with. This gave the investigators more time to investigate and to work out how this came about, so that when we did get to turning everything back on, we weren't immediately hit with the same problem all over again. Because, as I said, this was a very modern, very up-to-date infrastructure. So the good news there is everything re-established within 6 hours across 2 data centers. From our point of view, obviously from an applications perspective, further steps, verifications that needed to be taken. 100% data recovery from ransomware. And again, I take my hats off to the NetApp snapshots. People tell me snapshots aren't backups. No, maybe not. But I tell you what, if I can rewind your entire business back 5 minutes before you had ransomware, and it takes me only 10 minutes, would you like to do that? And most people will say yes. So once again, the value of NetApp snapshots came into play. Incidentally, the whole event fast-tracked improvements, even more improvements and upgrades across the rest of the IT estate. So where they were using legacy solutions and building legacy solutions or running legacy products. So things that we weren't necessarily involved in, we were then able to recommend, okay, you've got some old file servers, let's move them onto the NetApp. Okay, let's get that performance, let's get security, let's get a file server up and running that can't be hacked in the same way as a normal Windows file server can be attacked. So just from that, we're actually helping them move on with their transformation program. And I think that's one of the key things is that, yes, ransomware is scary, but you can come out of it with some positive outcomes, providing you've got everything in place there. We also used Veeam solutions as well to be able to restore some of the VMs to a time point, some of the applications that had very tight scripting routines and other things that they wanted to bring back. Equally, we've continued to provide additional support remotely through our help desk. So even as they've been going through their own process of restoring stuff, we've been working alongside them remotely to help with that. It's not just the product, it's the people you work with and the the help and support that you can get along the way and how that can make the difference. Some of those challenges may resonate with you, some may not, and hopefully you won't have to face the worst ones in there. One of our core values, I think, is quite important, and I think it's sort of reflected here today in some of the presentations we've seen earlier, is one of our roles is always progress, helping you progress, okay? But as part of a phrase, let's say that's progress through partnership, okay? We like to think that you're working with partnership in us. We're not just here to provide a product, provide a service and walk away, okay? So progress through partnership is a key feature within Saxis. And hopefully you can see that in today's examples, it was not just the technology, but it was the ability to respond in a timely manner, and also to provide that sort of technical leadership at a time when, let's face it, your chips are down, you've taken a hit perhaps, and you're a little bit unsure as to where to go. And sometimes the outside input can really help clear things up. So if you have any questions, feel free to grab me at break time. Anyone who's been part of our success stories and in the audience today and doesn't like it, I'll be over there, not over there. I won't be over there, I'll be over there. But thanks very much, everyone. Feel free to come and grab us if you've got any questions.